Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the 2021-2022 seasonal player ratings video. It's the video where we sit down and we basically give a rating to every single player in the Everton squad based on their season entirely. It's not the season review. The season review will be coming probably in a couple of parts over the next few days or so. We've also got a couple of transfer videos that we need to get out because there's been another whole load of transfer rumours, most of which are probably complete and utter bollocks, but some of which might have some form of substance in them, in some way. So we are going to go through all of the latest transfer rumours as well. That will be on a different video. We done this video last season for the first time, and people seem to enjoy it. It was obviously a good indication, especially considering we do the player ratings videos for every single game. It was a good indication to look at individual players and individual player performances, and how those players performed throughout the course of the season, whether some started well and then tailed off, whether some didn't start too well but picked themselves up towards the end of the season. It's a good indication to sit down, have a look, go through every player and just basically have a little conversation with them. It won't be too deep of a conversation because otherwise we'd be here for literally about an hour and a half, or even more so, probably about 6 hours, given the amount of players that we've got to discuss. But we'll have a couple of minute conversation about each player. We'll get into the comments. We'll see what people are saying and whether people agree with me or disagree with me. The thing with the player ratings videos is that they are the video that people disagree with the most on the channel and across any football YouTube channel, really, especially ones in which player ratings videos are out. It's obviously so easy to disagree with somebody's opinion on a certain player. Somebody might think a certain player's had a great season, I might think they haven't had too good of a season. Other people might think a player's had a poor season, I might think they've had a decent season. So it's all opinions. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. So if you do disagree, then don't hesitate to let me know and let me know what you think I'm wrong with and what you believe is right. So anyway, we'll get straight into them. A couple of people before we get into it asking about the kit. Andy says, "Hi Cam, mate, looking forward to seeing the new kit." And Blue Cali says, "When is the new kit being released?" I see a lot of talk on Twitter, social media and stuff over the last 24 hours or so about the new kits and whether or not they'll be released on Friday, being obviously today, Monday. I've seen a lot of talk about it, but I haven't actually seen any substance to any of the talk. I think people are just sort of guessing and randomly saying, "Oh, it must come out on this day or it must come out on that day." I know it was because of the sponsorship situation. Obviously Everton ending the sponsorship with Kazoo and still yet to announce who the new sponsor will be. Maybe that won't be announced until the actual kit is revealed itself. But in terms of when they'll be released or any information on it, I haven't got a clue. I'm as in the dark as anybody else, and I'm sure I'll find out when Hummel put a little bit of a teaser up, which is typically what they do every year. So in terms of the new kit, I wouldn't stress about it too much. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It will be revealed when it is revealed. There obviously is a new kit because there was a shoot for it about a month and a half ago. But in terms of when it will be revealed and released, we don't know. Maybe they done the shoot for the kit when there was no sponsor, and then a sponsor's coming. Now they've got to redo that shoot because the kits have obviously had to be remade. I don't know, but I'm not really worried about it. I'm not really stressed on it, to be perfectly honest with you. Anyway, let's get into the seasonal player ratings then. Without further ado, I've got the entirety of Everton's squad on my screen. I've also got a couple of the players who obviously left in January, which we'll have a little bit of a conversation about, which I think will be interesting. It's actually not as big of a squad as I thought it was at first. There'll probably be a couple of players in here who we don't talk too much about, maybe a couple of the young players. I'm looking at this squad list I've got up now, and I noticed that it doesn't involve Lewis Dobbin, it doesn't involve Tyler Onyango, it doesn't involve Reece Welsh, who've all had moments here and there this season, little cameo appearances. We'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get this one up because I think this has got some of the younger players on. Yeah, so we might have a little conversation, couple of minute conversation about those players towards the end of the video. But as I said, we're not really we're not really going to going to delve too deep into them because they haven't had an awful lot of game time, and it'd be absolutely pointless. Blue Cali says 3 out of 10 for the whole squad. Let's move on. So it's, again, it'll be individual players, but maybe we'll give a squad rating at the end of the video. We'll wait and see what happens. So let's start then with goalkeepers. Of course, we'll go goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, strikers, as you usually would. And let's start with Jordan Pickford. Jordan, I think it's fair to say, has been our standout player this season. I think it's quite ironic that we start with the best player and obviously we make our way down. Jordan obviously won Player of the Year in Everton's Player of the Year awards. He won Save of the Season from the Premier League as well for that save against Cesar Azpilicueta. And I'm going to give Jordan an 8 out of 10 for this season. I don't think anybody deserves a 10 out of 10, even though I don't think Jordan has been particularly at fault for many a goal that Everton have conceded or at fault for many a games that Everton have lost. But I just don't think, given the season we've just had, finishing 16th, barely surviving relegation, only confirming our survival in the Premier League on the penultimate day of the season, it just wasn't good enough. And although you might say, well, this is an individual video cam and you're talking about individual players, I just think nobody deserves a 10, to be honest with you. And there's not many players that deserve an 8, and there's not many players that will get anywhere near that, to be perfectly honest with you. But Jordan Pickford, I think, thoroughly does deserve an 8, and in some people's opinions might even deserve higher than that. But as I said, I'm putting it into the context of what we've just witnessed for the last 5, 6, 7 months, and for me, I think an 8 is a fair representation. Again, he's been fantastic, Jordan Pickford, over the last 2-3 months in the crucial moments, games against Chelsea, games against Crystal Palace, games against Brentford. He's made saves that you're just genuinely scratching your head and you're baffled about how good those saves are. We spoke about Jordan Pickford in last season's player ratings, and we spoke about how he didn't start the season particularly great. He struggled. He had a bit of problems, and then it comes to that Merseyside derby at Anfield, obviously the one in which we won, and that was almost like a turning point for the season. He was absolutely excellent from that point on, and therefore it was sort of like he started not so well, but he ended the season brilliantly last season. This season, he very much has continued on that form post that Merseyside derby win at Anfield last year, and he's just been phenomenal. He's just been absolutely phenomenal, Jordan Pickford. He's hardly put a foot wrong. Has he conceded goals that you're a little bit disappointed with? Yes, of course he has. Every goalkeeper on the planet will concede goals that you're a little bit disappointed with. Could he have maybe attacked the ball a little bit quicker? Could he have maybe opened his body a little bit more? I do still think he's got improvements to be made. I think improving his ability when one-on-one with strikers is something that I think Jordan should be focusing on. But that's being uber picky. As I said, Jordan Pickford was Everton's player of the season and was Everton's standout player by quite some distance, and there's not many players in this team that will get anywhere near the rating that Jordan Pickford has got. And as I said, if it wasn't for Jordan Pickford, over the last 4 months or so, 3 months or so specifically, Everton wouldn't be a Premier League team at this point. Everton would be a Championship team, and we'd have been relegated. That's how genuinely important he has been to this season. So as I said, I don't want to sit here and just go 10, because I just think it's a little bit, again, as Wanderlust says, 10 is literal perfection, and that's genuinely rare. Again, I don't think he's been perfection. There's been mistakes that he's made. There's been some corners that he maybe could have dealt with a little bit better. There's been a couple of goals that we've conceded that you're looking at and you're sort of thinking, could he have done a bit more there? But again, that's just me being picky. That's not me, having a go at Jordan Pickford. That's just me being picky and giving him a reason as to why I haven't given him a full 10 out of 10. But he's been phenomenal this season, and without Jordan Pickford, Everton wouldn't be in a position that we're in. We certainly wouldn't be as happy as we are now without Jordan Pickford. He's been that influential and he's been that good, and we're seeing videos of him on international duty at the moment with England making saves that you're just looking at and thinking, how are you making that save? It's, again, phenomenal. He's done that every week for however long with Everton, and he's been excellent. So Jordan is getting Jordan's getting an 8.5 out of 10. 9 I think is a little bit too high. 10 is far too high. He's getting an 8.5 out of 10. I think he's been exceptional this season and deserving of Player of the Year. And bearing in mind that's an 8.5 out of 10 in a season in where Everton finished 16th and barely survived relegation. So that's a pretty high mark. If the rest of the team weren't as bad, Jordan may well have got a 10 out of 10. Asmir Begovic then, I'm going to give Asmir a 6. And the reason being is because I think a 6 is average. And I think that's what Asmir Begovic has effectively been this season at Everton. He's been average. There's been games in which he's come in and he's done really, really well. I remember the game against Hull, was it, in the FA Cup, where he made an astonishing save in extra time to effectively win us that game, because that would have been an equaliser for them after Townsend made it 3-2, I believe. And yeah, he's been okay. There's been games in which he hasn't particularly showed his quality. The Newcastle game at Goodison Park, he done well. Obviously playing in that game, it was really, really important win at that time. But he has conceded some goals this season that you genuinely do scratch your head at and think, how have we conceded from there? Listen, I think Asmir is a decent number 2. He's nowhere near good enough to be number 1. And obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Pickford this summer. And if Jordan was to move on, then Everton would have to go and get a number 1 goalkeeper. But in terms of a number 2, and how good or how bad number 2s are in the Premier League, let's be honest, even the best teams, your Man Cities, your Liverpools, their number 2 goalkeepers aren't particularly outstanding. I think Asmir is a decent goalkeeper, and I think, as I said, he's had an average season on the basis that, from what we would have expected when we signed him, I think he's pretty much hit those expectations. He's had games where he's looked awful, and he's had games where he's looked relatively okay. And obviously he hasn't played an awful lot, so yeah, just an average season. And again, he's played a handful of times, 4, 5, 6 times, won the Florida Cup. So yeah, again, I think it would be a little bit unfair to sit here and give him any lower because of the season we've had when he's not really had that much of an impact on it, even though he's, as I said, there's been a couple of performances where he's been really, really poor, but, listen, he's the number 2, isn't he? Andy Lonergan then, yeah, NA, really. He's not played a game for Everton this season. He probably will never play a game for Everton in his life. I'll give him a 5 for just being around the changing room and, probably being a nice lad, probably being a good character to be around. Obviously brought in by Rafa Benitez during his tenure at the football club. But listen, I'm not at Finch Farm. I nearly said, I need to stop saying that, but I'm not at Finch Farm, so I don't know what type of character Andy Lonergan is. I don't know what his professionalism is. I don't know how effective he is on the younger goalkeepers, but what I do know is that a lot of goalkeepers talk about players like Andy Lonergan being, a good person to have in the changing room and a good example and a good mentor for some of the younger players, even if it's a Harry Tyler or even Jordan Pickford. At the end of the day, it's good to have somebody around that can just offer that extra bit of advice and bounce off. So yeah, he hasn't played the game, so he's getting a 5 on the basis that he might be a sound fella, but I don't know. And then João Virginia, obviously, he spent the majority of the season out on loan, hasn't played a game for Everton this season, so he can't get a rating. I'm not going to rate his season whenever he's been out on loan because I haven't watched them once, so I think that would be a little bit unfair. Into the defenders then, John Joe Kenny. John Joe Kenny. Topic of conversation at the moment, John Joe Kenny, for a couple of reasons. One of them being the fact that there is strong rumours from quite reliable journalists, such as Paul Joyce, stating that John Joe Kenny has been offered a new 3-year contract at Everton. Look, we're not going to go too far into that in this video because I want to do a transfer video where we sit down and we talk about the latest transfer news and rumours, and we're gonna really hit that nail, that subject on its head in that video. But what I would say is, I understand the people saying John Joe's a squad player. I understand the people saying you need a squad. I understand the people saying he's cover for left back. I understand the people saying he plays with passion, he plays with fight, he plays with energy. I understand all of that. John Joe Kenny being offered a new 3-year deal at Everton is, if that doesn't tell you the reasons as to why we're in the position that we're in, financially and as a football club, then I don't know what will. I don't care how good of a squad player he might be, how much fight or passion he shows. he should not be being offered a 3-year deal. A 1-year deal to get us over the line while we maybe, I don't know, see where Nazin Kunku is at. Because let's be honest, he's not coming in as cover for right back. He's coming in as cover for left back. He's played more at left back this season than he has at right back. We've got Nathan Patterson and Sheamus Coleman at right back, as well as Ben Goffy and Mason Holgate, who can play there comfortably. Now, okay, you could say Ben Goffy can play left back relatively comfortably as well, but let's be honest, John Joe will be being kept at the football club for cover for Vitaly Mykolenko. He's played there when Vitaly Mykolenko hasn't been available before this season. He's done all right at times this season at left back. I know some people say you're just being hypercritical, you're just having a go for having a go's sake. There's no situation where you'll be able to convince me that John Joe Kenny being given a 3-year deal at Everton, when we know he's a championship player at best, we know he's not good enough, we know he hasn't got the ability, we know he hasn't got the defensive awareness to give him a new 3-year deal. Now you might say, well, financially it works, Cam, because you might give him a new 3-year deal and then sell him for a bit of money. If that's what the plan is, then that makes more sense than what I actually think the plan is, and that's because I think they think he's good enough to stay at the football club, which is just baffling. But anyway, as I said, that's a conversation for a completely other video. In terms of his season as a whole, yeah, again, he's another one that's difficult to rate, because I'm rating him based off of what I expect from him, and this is going to be the case with a lot of these players. Is you're giving them a seasonal rating based off of what we expect, and I think John Joe's had a poor season, if I'm being honest with you. Has he come in at times and looked okay? Yes, I'll give him that. There's been a couple of games where he stepped in, he's done a job at left back, and he's looked all right. He's worked hard, he's battled. He offers nothing going forward. He offers absolutely nothing going forward. He can't cross a ball. He can't. I think he actually got one assist this season, and I can't remember which one it was. But in a general sense, he offers nothing going forward. And defensively, he's not very good either. Let's be honest. Defensively, he's not very good. His positional sense is shocking. His one-on-one defending isn't very good. His decision-making at times is shocking. But that's what you expect from him. So when he has a game where you look at him and you go, he's actually just done all right there. He hasn't made any silly mistakes. He's kept his position. He's kept in line. He's worked hard. He's put himself about. That almost seems like a 10 out of 10 unbelievable man of the match performance. By the way, it's like my new tattoo. It's going to be hard to show it on this camera, but it is straight. It just looks bent on the camera because I've got a straight in my arm like that. But that is the coordinates of Goodison Park, for anybody wondering. That's my new tattoo. You can see it more straight if I go that way. Anyway, yeah, I'm baffled as to the reasons to be he's been given a new contract, to be perfectly honest with you, or he's been offered a new contract. But yeah, again, you're giving him a rating based off of what you expect from him, and I expect shite from John Joe Kenny because he's not a very good footballer. He's not a very good defender. He's not a very good footballer. So when he's put a performance in that is a bit better than shite, just average, you're looking going, oh my God, he was excellent today. He was fabulous. He's not a great defender. He's not great going forward. Has he had a couple of games this season where he's looked okay? Yes. Do his stats look particularly awful? Not really. They look all right, but they look nowhere near what they should look at for the Premier League fullback. So that's what you have to judge on him. In terms of giving him a rating, again, I'm going to give him a 5. 6 being the average, and I think he's been below average. And again, he hasn't played an awful lot this season. He's played an awful lot more than he should have done because he shouldn't be playing for Everton because he's not good enough. But as I said, he's had a couple of games where he's come in and he's looked like he could do a job. I wouldn't say he's looked great. He's looked like he could do a job. But he's had other games where you can just tell that what his level is, and you can't afford that. You can't afford it. If we want to be anything other than just a mid-table, mediocre football club, you can't have players like John Joe Kenny starting games for you. You simply can't. And as I said, this season I think he's proved a couple of times in key games that his decision making and his positional awareness is just absolutely abysmal. But that's what you'd expect from him because that's the type of player that he is. That's his quality. So yeah, I'll give him a 5, just below average, because he's not played an awful lot. He's had a couple of games where he's looked all right, but for the most part, he's nowhere near good enough. And as I said, that contractual situation is a fucking joke. It's an absolute joke. Anyway, on to the next defender. Nathan Patterson. I think it's going fullback into fullback. So, Nathan Patterson. Again, really, really difficult. He's played 45 minutes since coming in January, which was against Boreham Wood. I actually think he looked good. I actually think he looked good in that 45 minutes. He was obviously taken off by Frank Lampard. Frank said it wasn't anything to do with his performance. It was a tactical decision. I think it was a little bit harsh because there was other players on that pitch at that time that I would have taken off over Nathan Patterson. And then obviously he picked up quite a significant injury towards the end of the season, and we never seen him again, did we? Which is disappointing because, Nathan obviously come in, and I think we all had the view of him coming in to be the number one right back, and I do think he will be the number one right back in due course. Whether or not that will happen, at the start of next season or midway through next season, I don't know. But it needs to happen because I think we can all establish as hard as Sheamus works, as much as Sheamus Coleman loves Everton, as much as we love Sheamus Coleman, he just isn't. He's just not at that level he needs to be now. Now, is Nathan Patterson at that level? We don't know because we've only seen him play 45 minutes against effectively a Sunday League team. We've seen him play for Scotland, and he's looked good. We've seen him play a couple of times for Rangers, and he's looked good. But this is a completely different step up in the Premier League, and I'm sure we'll see a lot of what Nathan Patterson has got to offer next season, and hopefully in pre-season as well, depending on how he can recover from that injury. But yeah, in terms of a rating, again, it's pretty much an NA, isn't it? I'll give him a 5 for the sake of that. The 45 minutes that he played, he looked okay in. But it's pretty much an NA, to be honest with you. Pretty much an NA. I don't think he's had the chance, has he, to really sit here and scrutinise him. He's played at a half since he's been here, and he's got an injury as well. Now there is question marks as to why he wasn't involved a lot earlier, why he wasn't given those opportunities a lot earlier. But maybe Frank Lampard's come in. We've heard a lot. We've heard a lot from Frank over the last week or so about his relationship with Sheamus Coleman. We've seen the video of him saying to Sheamus Coleman's kid, "Your daddy is the best man I've ever met in my life." We've seen the videos of him in the changing rooms with Sheamus Coleman. He very clearly has a personal relationship and a respect for Sheamus Coleman as Everton captain and as an experienced player within this team. And that would make a lot of sense as to why Nathan Patterson wasn't really getting in the team, obviously before he picked up his injury, and the fact that Sheamus is experienced, he's the captain, he knows the club, he's an experienced Premier League player, and the situation that we were in, maybe Frank was thinking, I don't really want to risk throwing Nathan Patterson in here when I've got Sheamus. And then obviously, when Nathan Patterson was due to start and was due to play, he picked up an injury that's kept him out for the rest of the season. So yeah, it's difficult to give him any real rating, isn't it? Let's be honest. Mason Holgate then, moving on to Mason. I'm going to give Mason a 5.5 out of 10. Now, we've established 6 is average. 1 is woefully shite. 6 is average. 10 is unbelievable. I think Mason's gotten a 5.5, and that is being boosted, by the way. Why have I got 15 text messages? What's going on here? That is being boosted, by the way, heavily by the fact that over the last 4 months, maybe, not even that, 3 months, 2 months, he has improved drastically. I think Mason is an example of a player that when he needed to step up, he stepped up. Little bit like Michael Keane, little bit like Alex Iwobi. They have had good, strong ends to the season. I'll give them that. Mason's header knockback to Michael Keane for the first goal against Crystal Palace was brilliant. He does it. It's not selfish. It's not greedy. He knocks it back. He knows where Michael Keane is. It's a really good setup. When he says he should get a 3 or 4 marks for Holgate. I've given him a boost because I think he's looked stable in recent weeks, and by recent weeks I mean the last couple of weeks of the season. He's looked stable, he's looked better, he's looked more improved, but he's a fine example of a player who was shite for a long period of time and then picked himself up in a period where everybody picked themselves up and where everybody improved. And this is where I think we can't get too sentimental, especially when we're talking about players like Alex Iwobi, who we'll go on to a little bit later on. Mason is not good enough to be a starting centre-back for Everton. Is he good enough to be a squad player? Probably, because I don't think we can sit here and say, you know, this player, none of them are good enough to even be at the club. We know they're not. But at the position that we're in, the financial situation that we're in, and the fact that you can't just go and replace a whole 24-man squad in one transfer window, I think you're looking at a position where, with Mason, if we were to get a bid for him of anything more than 7-8 million, I think I would sell him within a heartbeat. And he shouldn't be starting games for Everton. He's a squad player who, on his day, can do a job and can look okay. If he's next to the leader, if he's next to Yerry Mina, if he's next to, you know, Michael Keane on a good day. But when he's off his day, positionally he's awful. His decision-making's awful. I think his confidence gets too ahead of him. And we saw that a lot this season. Now, okay, towards the end of the season, he improved, and we obviously saw drastic change in everybody within the squad. But that doesn't account for, and that doesn't make up for the fact that beforehand he wasn't very good, and he hasn't been very good, has he, for a while now. So yeah, in fact, I'm going to give him a 5. I think a 5.5 probably a bit too high. And as I said, that's massively boosted by the fact that he, I think, stabilised himself towards the last few weeks of the season and looked better, but he's still not good enough for Everton. He's still not good enough for Everton, is he? Let's be honest. Next player then is Michael Keane. Again, very similar to Mason. Very similar to Mason. I'm gonna give Michael Keane a 4.5 out of 10 because I think he played more than Mason Holgate. I think I might be wrong, and I think he's made more mistakes than Mason. To be honest with you, I think he's been a fault more than Mason has. But again, you know, credit where credit's due, and I do give credit where credit is due. Of course, I do. They worked towards the end of the season. And this is a really good comment from Wormy. Wormy says, this is the thing, these players know how to do just enough to stay up, but ultimately, likes of Holgate and Iwobi are the reason that the club are in the position in the first place. That is spot on. That is absolutely spot on. And I refuse to sit here and be sentimental and go, Alex Iwobi is getting a 10 out of 10 for this season. Listen, Alex Iwobi has been fantastic since Frank Lampard come in, and a lot of Blues would give him the benefit of the doubt that this is a new start in Alex Iwobi's Everton career now. And listen, if we don't get a bid for Alex Iwobi this summer, then I wouldn't have a massive issue with him staying at the football club and playing a part next season, because he has looked significantly better under Frank Lampard. He looks more comfortable. He's enjoying his football a lot more. He's telling us that himself. If we were to get a bid for him, I'd sell him tomorrow. A decent enough bid. And the reason is because 3.5 years of not even shite, of abysmal. Let's be honest. Before Frank Lampard come in, people were talking about Alex Iwobi as the worst signing Everton have ever made. So 5 good months does not take away from the 3.5 dreadful years that we've had. So we have to be careful with it, and I think Mason fits into that, and I think Michael Keane fits into that as well. Michael Keane, up until, you know what, probably the game against Manchester United, where I thought he was excellent in, up until then was shocking. Was absolutely shocking. Typical Michael Keane, not leading, you know, not talking to his fellow defenders, making mistakes, a fault for goals, a fault for, you know, chances we were conceding. He was shocking. And yes, in the, you know, the remaining few weeks of the season, as I said, post Manchester United, he looked good, he looked strong, he looked good when he was next to Yerry Mina, he even looked good when he was next to Mason Holgate. He seemed to come out of his shell a lot more. He looked good against Leicester when he had to come on. He looked really good Leicester away. He obviously scored the first goal in the Palace game, which got us back into it. Again, really good touch, really good finish. But I think for the sake of, you know, you could maybe say, well, it's nearly half a season that he's performed well for. So, but yeah, for me, I'm going to give him a 4.5 because I just don't think he's good enough to start. Maybe he will be good enough one day. Maybe if James Tarkowski comes in and he's the sort of leader in that centre, that centre of defence, and then maybe Michael Keane can, you know, I don't know, work off of that a little bit and feed off of that. I don't know. But again, Michael Keane was given a new 5-year deal at the football club after playing well for about 2 months, despite the fact that for the last 2 years beforehand he was awful. So, we know the issues at the football club, of course we do. But yeah, Michael Keane, I think, picked himself up, worked hard towards the end of the season, dragged us through when we needed to. But as Wormy quite rightly says, the reason that we were in this position in the first place is because of players like Michael Keane not being good enough. Yeah. Anyway, on to the next one then. Yerry Mina. Again, I'm gonna give Yerry a 6. I don't think we can go too much higher than a 6. 6 being an average, and the reason it's an average is because when Yerry Mina plays, he's averaging 7, 8, maybe even 9 out of 10 performances because of how important he is to this team. His commandment in the centre of defence, his leadership, his personality, his ability, his physicality, his defensive capabilities. He's fantastic. Yerry Mina, he's absolutely fantastic. But he's just not there enough. And look, before this season, I think his injury record wasn't actually as drastic as it may seem. I think he averaged something like 26, 27 games a season before this season. This season it's been worse. And I think that the problem with Yerry Mina isn't necessarily the fact that, well, it is his injury problems, but it's more the inconsistency of his injury issues. It's more the fact that it's not he plays 6 games and then he's out for 6 months. He plays 1 game and then he's out for 4 months. 3 months, 4 months. And that you just can't build a team off of that. That inconsistency and that lack of reliability, as much as it isn't Yerry Mina's fault, as much as I love Yerry Mina, I think he's brilliant. I think he's a personality, and I think losing Yerry Mina would be a big decision for this football club. And some people have got, why would it be a big decision, Cam? Because he's never there, he never plays, and yeah, he's good, but if you can replace that quality, then, surely it's not that big of a decision. But you're losing a character there, and trust me when I say, having players like Yerry Mina in your club, in your team, in the dressing room, is so important, because he lifts everybody. He's like a beacon of positivity. Even when he's not in the match they scored, he's still there, he's in the tunnel, he's hugging the players. You can tell that they all get along with Yerry Mina. And if you lose that, you don't only lose the player in himself and what he brings, which, by the way, is a top class centre-half. If Yerry Mina had a decent, not even an unbelievable, a decent fitness record, he would A, be Everton's captain, and B, be playing for one of the best teams in the league. He wouldn't be Everton's captain because he'd have gone to a City or a Liverpool, and he'd be not Liverpool now, but a City, and he'd be Chelsea, and he'd be winning league titles. He's that good. The fact he isn't there is because he's unreliable and he's never fit. The club have to make a decision on him because he's not got long left on his contract. He's on a lot of money, and the decision this summer is, do we give him a new contract or do we sell him? But if you are to sell him, it's not as easy as, well, we're just selling a player who's always injured. You're selling a personality. You're selling a player that almost glues the dressing room together, like he glues everybody together when he's on the pitch. And that is a big loss. But in terms of his season, as I said, I think it would be difficult to give him any more than an average of a 6 because of the fact that he just hasn't been there enough. He just hasn't been there enough. When he's been there, he's been excellent. He's been excellent when he's been there, I'll give him that. But he just hasn't been there enough for me. And that is, that is what it is. I suppose that is what it is. Next then, Nailsin Kunku. Again, obviously went out on loan in the summer. I haven't watched them on loan. Apparently he's done a decent job there. I wouldn't know. I've not watched them one bit. Hopefully he can come in and provide left back cover for Vitaly Mykolenko. But why would he do that when we'll just give John Joe Kenny a new contract? Why would he need to do that? But no, again, whether or not he's ready now to go and be a Premier League player, maybe have a role somewhere else in the team. It mightn't necessarily be at left back. It might be on the wing or in the midfield. I don't know. Again, I'm just throwing some shouts out there. I don't really know. Maybe again, we'll wait and see. But I'm not going to give him a rating because he's not played for Everton. Vitaly Mykolenko then. I'm going to give Vitaly Mykolenko a 8 out of 10. No, I'm not. What did I give Jordan? I gave Jordan 8.5, didn't I? I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Reason being is because I think he come in, and obviously again he come in under ridiculously difficult circumstances in his personal life and in a footballing sense as well. You know, let's not forget, Vitaly Mykolenko's only just turned 23 years old. When he signed for Everton, he was a 22-year-old coming over from a new country, a new language, a new culture, on his own, and in the middle of everything that's going on at the moment over there. Unbelievably difficult. Something I'd never be able to do, and something I know not a lot of people would be able to do. Unbelievably difficult to have to deal with, on top of the pressures of being a Premier League footballer, on top of the pressures of joining a team that are fighting relegation, on top of the pressures of having to replace that team's arguably best player in Luca Dean. Certainly most creative player in Luca Dean. And I think when he first come in for Tally, you could see there was a little bit of pressure on him, and you could see he was struggling with that. I remember his debut against Hull, was it? And positional wise, you could tell that he was off. You could tell that he just wasn't ready, and it was always going to be difficult, as I said, because we were ultimately basing Vitaly Mykolenko off of Luca Dean. We were all doing it because we'd gone from having Luca Dean in there to having Vitaly Mykolenko in there, so it was always going to be a case of, well, his positioning isn't quite as good as Luca Dean, or his crossing isn't quite as good as Luca Dean. And, you know, listen, whether we like him or we dislike him, and the Luca Dean situation is baffling in itself, considering, you know, we literally sold him because the manager didn't like him and then sacked the manager 2 days later. It's mad. But, you know, whether you like him or you don't like him, Luca Dean was one of our best players. He was our most creative player. He was, again, although he hadn't had a great season up to that point, he was one of our better players. And, you know, for the young lad to come in at that age in a new country, in a new environment, with everything else that was going on, and have to replace a player of the importance of Luca Dean, it's always going to be, you know, ridiculously difficult. However, I think he settled in really, really quickly, and in a different sense to everybody else, because, you know, Vitaly Mykolenko wasn't shite for 4 months and didn't put us in the position that we're in and then decided to work hard. Vitaly Mykolenko come in when we were in a shit position and he improved massively. So it's a bit different to the other players. But, again, over the last 2 months, 3 months, he's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not just saying this. Vitaly Mykolenko has had to deal with some of the best forwards on the planet. Some of the very, very, very best on the planet. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo. He's had to deal with Marcus Rashford. He's had to deal with Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, Luis Diaz, Diego Jota. You know, who else have we played in there? Chelsea, Kai Havertz, Timo Werner. He's had to deal Conor Gallagher, Jordan Ayew, who he shouldn't have had to deal with because he should have been sent off. He's had to deal with some of the Premier League's top forwards. Top forwards. And he's dealt with them all like that. Like, there's no issue. Even in the games that we've lost, he has been the standout. I can't remember the last time I sat and done a player ratings video after a game and said, oh, Vitaly Mykolenko was a bit poor today. You know, there's been games where we've lost him and we've been poor, and it's sort of been like, yeah, he wasn't great, neither was anybody, but he's cut out the silly mistakes. Positional wise, he's been fantastic. He's improved drastically, and I mean drastically. Going forward, again, he's not at that level of Luca Dean, but not many players are. He scored a worldie against Leicester, an absolute worldie against Leicester, which again shows that he's got that in his locker. He's got that quality. He's got that ability. You know, we just need to see it a little bit more. We just need to see that come out a little bit more. But he's been phenomenal. He's been absolutely phenomenal, Vitaly Mykolenko, and I think I give Jordan an 8.5. I'm giving Vitaly Mykolenko a 7. Because, and a 7 out of 10 for the season we've just had is a phenomenal score, by the way. I don't think anybody can be disappointed with Vitaly Mykolenko. Not only because of what's gone on in regards to his situation personally, but it's not like we're sitting here going, He's been alright, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's been fantastic. He's genuinely been fantastic. Defensively, he's improved so much, which is great because it shows that he's got that ability to improve if need be. Going forward, he's a lot more confident. He's getting into areas. Okay, his crossing still isn't great, but he's getting into the right areas. He's putting the right types of balls in. He's showing that there's that potential there. He showed that he can hit a ball very clearly with the goal against Leicester, which is unbelievable, and one goal of the season, which I think is well deserved. The technique on it is so difficult to master, and he did. So yeah, I've not got a bad word to say about Vitaly Mykolenko. I really haven't. I think he's come in and I think he's exceeded our expectations, which is important. I think he's exceeded our expectations, which is important. And like I said, considering the player he was coming in to replace, I think he's done brilliantly. I really do. Let's have a little chat about Luca Dean then, because he's a left back, and we may as well talk about him. He's played for Everton this season. I'll give him a 3 out of 10. Not because he left, and because I'm sitting here being biased that he left. But before he left, he wasn't great. He hadn't scored this season. Don't think he'd got many assists, if any assists, actually, this season so far. And obviously he left midway through the season as well. So, again, obviously he had everything that went on with Benitez, and they very clearly didn't get on. And there was a period for about a month, 2 months, where Luca Dean was still an Everton player, but yet never played for Everton because of that fallout with Rafa Benitez. He was on the bench, or he just wasn't getting involved whatsoever. He just wasn't getting in the team whatsoever, over players that were either not good enough to be in there or playing out of position. And you've got a French international left back who can't get in because he's had an argument with the manager. It was just the nightmare season in regards to Luca Dean. Obviously, he ended up getting off. We don't need to really sit and talk too much about that, but beforehand, and even before he had the seeming falling out with Rafael Benitez, he wasn't great. And there was a lot of people saying, he's not playing well at the moment, Luca Dean. He's not really started that way. And again, I'm not going to sit here and go, it's his fault or it's all on him, because, nobody was great. And nobody has really been great this season. So it's not really one to sit here and have a massive go at him for it. But, yeah, he can get a 3 out of 10 for that. Just because thought I may as well rate him because he's played for Everton this season, hasn't he? Ben Goffy then. Ben's going to get a 4 out of 10 as well. I've just realised I've got a lot of players to go through here, so we'll have to speed this up. Ben's getting a 4 out of 10. Obviously, he started the season having suffered from COVID, so there was a period where he wasn't available and wasn't in the team, wasn't in the squad, and was struggling. He's had injuries this season. He's struggled with more injuries this season than I think he ever has in his career. And yeah, he's just not been particularly great, has he? The season he had last season was, I don't want to say an anomaly, because I'd like to think Ben Goffrey can get to that level and put in that level of performance consistently again in seasons to come. But it certainly wasn't a one that I think we were going to see every season. He's got a lot of improvement to do defensively. He's got a lot of improvement to do in terms of a positional sense. And again, he falls under the case of he's had good games. He's had games where he's looked solid. He's had games where he's looked okay. And he's had games where Tottenham away, what springs to mind, where you're just looking and you're thinking, can this lad even defend? He's big, he's physical, he can run, he can move, but can he defend? He's got a lot to learn, Ben Goffrey. And I think last season was a season where we all maybe overestimated him and all maybe, overhyped him a little bit. Whereas this season we've seen that, he's got a lot to learn. He has taken on a lot of responsibility as well. He's playing across multiple different positions. He's been asked to do various different jobs since he's been at Everton. But as a centre-half, I think he's still got a lot to learn. He's still a good young player, and I still think he'll be one of our two centre-halves going forward. But he's got a lot to learn, and as I said, I don't particularly think he's had a great season. Sheamus Coleman then. I'll give Sheamus a... Difficult. I'm going to give Sheamus a 6. And that is massively boosted, by the way, in the last, again, month or so, which is quite ironic because most of these players are boosted within the last, couple of months or so. But Sheamus is specifically because he's picked himself up. He showed leadership. He showed heart. He showed passion. He showed desire, and he's showed a lot more than he showed, I think, previously in his Everton career, which is good because we needed to see that from Sheamus. But the reality is, he shouldn't be starting games of football for Everton. It is generous. CC says generous. It is generous. It's generous because of what he gave in the last couple of months in terms of his desire and his passion. But again, he's not good enough. He's just not good enough to start. I love him. He's a club icon, legend, whatever you want to call him. But for me now, Sheamus cannot be more than a backup right back next season. Whether that means Nathan Patterson is the number one, or whether that means we go out and we sign somebody else to be the number one. Again, I don't know. I'll leave that to Frank. I'll absolutely leave that to Frank. But Sheamus Coleman cannot be our number one right back next season. Sheamus Coleman has got to be at the very, very, very most a backup. At the very, very, very most a number two. He can't be the number one. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. We'll wait and see. But yeah, again, not a great season for Sheamus. Positional wise, he's been poor. He's conceded a lot. We've conceded a lot of goals that have come from his side. He still doesn't stop a cross, which I find baffling considering how experienced he is. But yeah, again, I don't particularly blame Sheamus because the reason he starts every week isn't his fault. It's because the club have failed to replace him ultimately. And I've only just replaced them now in January with a lad who we decided not to play and then got an injury and was out for the rest of the season. But yeah, he hasn't had a great season. Let's be honest, he hasn't had a great season. And then Jared Branthwaite can get a 3 out of 10. He looked great against Chelsea away from home at Stamford Bridge. Obviously scored his goal against Chelsea away from home at Stamford Bridge as well. Got the sending off against Brentford, which, as an isolated incident, was a sending off. Should never have happened because obviously of the refereeing decision. But yeah, he hasn't had much game time this season, Jared, but when he's played, I think he's looked... I'd have liked to have seen more. I'd have liked to think he will have progressed more, and I just don't think he has. I think a season out on loan, maybe at a Premier League club, maybe at a high-level Championship club, I think that'll do him really, really well. But if you believe the transfer rumours, he's being linked to Manchester City, so we'll wait and see how that one goes. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. That would mean a massive amount to me. On to the midfielders then. We'll probably fly through these because I know people are probably getting a little bit bored. Alam is getting a 4 out of 10. Obviously, we haven't seen him for quite a while. When he's on the pitch, I think he works hard. I think he puts himself about. I think he's a little bit of a Rottweiler. I think there's been games this season where he's played well in, where he's performed, where he's battled, where he's worked hard, and where he's suited. But there's also been games this season where he's just been completely ran ragged, and he's looked out of place, and he's looked slow, and his lack of pace, and his lack of intensity, and his lack of urgency in the midfield has really, really come and caught him. If you are new to the channel, by the way, please do subscribe. It only takes a second. Really, really caught him, and again, I just think he's not had a standout season, has he? You know, it sounds harsh, but it almost felt like for the last couple of months of the season he wasn't even an Everton player. You know, Fabian Delph was getting in there over him, which is baffling in itself. I don't think Alan will be an Everton player come the end of this window. I know he spoke out and said he wants to stay, but I think if Everton get a bid for him, they'd be silly not to sell. CC says, I like your analysis. Actually, it's certainly honest. Thank you very much. That's all I try and be, honest. Fabian Delph, out of contract now. Listen, given the John Joe Kenny situation, Fabian Delph will probably get a lifetime contract at Everton. I'll give him a 5. I think he stepped up when he needed to step up towards the end of the season, and he put in some performances that we really, really needed. A solid, effective Premier League midfielder who knew what they were doing and was able to just sit in there and just control games of football. You know, just ultimately, yeah, just do a job in there. And again, I don't think it was anything special. I don't think it was anything unbelievable. I don't think it was anything that you looked at and you went, you're amazing. It was just doing a job. And that just shows how far Everton have dropped, doesn't it, over recent years. Is we're no longer looking at players and thinking, you're good, but you're not good enough. You're looking at players and thinking, if you can do a job, then you're getting in. But again, it doesn't make up for the fact that he's an idiot, in my opinion. He's robbed Everton of a living for some time. We'll probably never see him again in an Everton shirt. So, yeah, you know, for coming in and doing a job when we needed him to, he can have that rating. But overall, for the rest of the season, he done what he usually does and spent it out injured, apparently, which is interesting, isn't it? He's always injured, isn't he? But when he come in towards the end of the season, he was in over Alan every week. You know, you could tell Frank Lampard clearly liked him. And yeah, there's not much more to say, is there really? Abdoulaye Doucouré then. I'm going to give Abdoulaye you know what? I'm going to give Abdoulaye a 5 out of 10 as well. I think he was below average this season, if I'm being honest with you. I do feel a little bit sorry because I think there was times when it was games where he was having to do more than one role, and you could see that was affecting him, and you could see that was a struggle for him. And in those games he didn't perform particularly well, and then you're speaking about him after the game and you're saying, oh, he was awful today, he was this and that, but you don't actually realise that he's having to do the role of, a couple of players, especially when Anzai Gomez is next to him, because Anzai Gomez is fucking useless. So yeah, again, he hasn't been great this season. His passing hasn't. He started the season well, obviously scored that goal against Southampton, which was an absolute beauty. And he almost started the season in a way of which he was playing in a more of an attacking role. And he actually spoke about it. He spoke about it after those first few games of the season. He actually said, "Oh, I'm enjoying my football a little bit more, playing in more of an attacking role. Being able to get forward a little bit more, being able to express myself a little bit more." And then it just, all of a sudden, when we started to pick up injuries and Rafa Benitez started to remember that he doesn't actually like Everton and doesn't want us to do well, he dropped further back then, and then he reverted to the sort of DM position rather than the box-to-box midfielder who could get forward and cause issues in the opposition goal. He then never really went into the opposition box. He never really threatened. He wasn't really having shots. He wasn't really doing anything, was he, to be honest? Yeah, I just think he's had, considering the way in which he started and what he spoke about, I think he'd be disappointed. Again, I don't particularly put all of the blame on him. I think his passing needs to improve drastically. And his control as well. But, yeah, he just hasn't had a great season, has he? He just hasn't had none of them have, but he's been below average. EFC makes me unhappy. Says, can't believe he said Michael Keane might be good one day. It's a bit of sarcasm, mate. It's a bit of sarcasm. Yeah, anyway, Anzai Gomez is getting a 1. And it's not even a personal vendetta. It's not. In fact, no, Anzai Gomez can get a 2. Because there was a couple of games where he come on and as a substitute and he quote unquote changed the game just because he added a bit more control to it and he added a bit more quality in the midfield. But no, for me, Anzai Gomez is ineffective. He's an ineffective footballer. He can't defend. He's a midfielder who can't defend and doesn't score goals and assist. So what is he? You'd say, well, okay, is he quick? So does he, win the ball back like a Ghana Gay type of player? No. Is he agile? No. Is he a good passer of the ball? He's all right. What Anzai Gomez is a good technical footballer. But you have to be more than a good technical footballer to be a success in the Premier League. And you have to be more than a good technical footballer to play for a team like Everton. And he isn't. He's not quick. He's not agile. He doesn't score. He doesn't defend. He can pass a ball, and I'm sure his touch is wonderful, and he's got a boss haircut, but he's not very good in every other sense. And for me, he's been completely ineffective this season, and that this season should spell the end of Anzai Gomez's time at Everton Football Club. Whether it will or not, we'll wait and see, but it absolutely should spell the end of Anzai Gomez's time at Everton Football Club, to be honest with you. Anthony Gordon then, who's in here as midfielders for some reason. I'm not really sure why. Anthony Gordon's getting an 8 out of 10 as well. I don't think he's been as effective as Jordan Pickford. But Anthony is one of the few players that throughout the course of the entire season has given everything. There's been some players that over the last few weeks or so have decided to pick themselves up and give everything. Anthony is one that over the course of the season as a whole has really, really, really dragged us through the shit. Really, really, really dragged us through the shit. His effort, his desire, his commitment, his pace, his ability to threaten defenders with his pace and with his confidence to run at them and to take the ball past them. Is he the perfect player? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He needs to improve on his shooting. He needs to improve on his crossing. He needs to improve on his decision making in the final third. He needs to improve on his corners into the box because they're not good enough. But he's still very, very young, and he's had a season there where he's effectively had to put the weight of the entire club on his shoulders, and carry that weight for an entire season. Now, some players have come up towards the end of the season and said, yeah, Anthony, we'll take a little bit of weight off you, but for the rest of the season, he's had to carry all of that weight and all of that burden, and I think he deserves an immense amount of credit for that. Anthony Gordon, I think he's been fabulous. His work ethic, his desire, his commitment, his effort. Technically, can he improve? Of course he can. And will he improve? I think he will. But you can tell he causes problems to defenders. You know, he played against Liverpool, who are apparently the best team ever to have existed, and he absolutely ran them riot for the entire game. He had Trent Alexander-Arnold, who again is apparently the best right-back ever to have existed. He had him on toast for the entirety of the game. Should have had a penalty, of course, in that game, and that just shows his quality. He can run at players, he's skillful, he's got pace. He just needs to improve on that final ball, goal contributions, assists and stuff. When he does that, he will be some player. But I think anything less than an 8, I think, would be silly, because of how well he's done this season with the pressure he's had, and the fact that there's not been one game where you look at Anthony Gordon and think he's not arsed. There's been a couple of games where you're looking at him thinking he's fucking knackered, but there's not been one game where you look at him and you think he's not arsed, and that says a lot, to be honest. So yeah, Anthony Gordon again with Jordan Pickford has been fantastic. Won Young Player of the Year and Players Player, of course. The fact he won Players Player tells you a lot about him, because it tells you a lot about what his fellow teammates think about him, and yeah, I think he's been great. Jean-Philippe Gbamin is getting a 1. He only played once this season. It was against Wolves away. I was there at the Molineux on that day, and he was fucking abysmal. He was absolutely abysmal. Was it his fault? Probably not. No. He should have been playing in a midfield 3. He wasn't. He was playing in a midfield 2, and he'd only just come back from about 4 years out injured. So I don't blame him, but he wasn't very good. He obviously then went out on loan. I think he done okay on loan, but he don't want to sign him because he had some attitude issues, which just tells you everything about him. Listen, again, we'll talk more about Jean-Philippe Gbamin when we do a keep sell video over the next couple of weeks or so. But for me, his time at Everton is done now. Just get rid. Get rid to anyone. Any bidder for any amount of money, just get rid. He's got no future at Everton Football Club, has he? Let's be honest. And then Tom Davies again. Tom, I'm going to give a 3, because I think it's difficult to give him any more than a 3. He spent a lot of the season out injured. Come back obviously in the last game of the season against Arsenal. He wasn't particularly good in that game, but I do think he's a player that might thrive under Frank Lampard. Now I might be wrong, that might just be me speaking with my heart because I want him to thrive, but I do think he's a player that could potentially thrive under Frank Lampard, and I hope he does. I hope he does, because you know, again, there's something there for Tom. Whether or not he's good enough, we'll wait and see, but there's definitely something there. Onto the forwards then. Richarlison, I'm going to give Richie I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 as well. Similar to Anthony Gordon, he's not one of these players where he says Cam is too generous. If his ratings were accurate, we would have finished 8th to 12th. But what have I been too generous with, Wormy? Let me know. Gordon says, Wormy says Gordon 6, sure he has put efforts in but needs goals in this. He does, but I'm saying 8 in the sense of, in comparison, it's a comparative video, so it's in comparison to everybody else. We can talk about, has his quality been an 8 out of 10? No, he doesn't score enough, he doesn't create enough, and his final ball isn't good enough. But you've got to add the fact that he's had the pressure of the entire club on his shoulders for the entire season. Effectively, you could add that the fact that he's one of the only players that every week consistently has cared and has showed he's cared and has wanted to play for the badge and wanted to fight and wanted to work hard when other players haven't. So I'm adding it all together. Richarlison is getting a similar. He's getting an 8 because, again, I think he's one of the only players that for the entirety of the season has put the whole club on his shoulders and effectively said, no, do you know what? We're getting out of this. Has he been unbelievable this season in terms of his goals, his assists, his contributions? No, he hasn't. He hasn't been as good as you would have liked him to have been. He's had injuries, he's had problems, of course. Ironically enough, James Tarkowski put him out injured. I've just dropped my pen. James Tarkowski put him out injured after a tackle at Goodison. But his effort, his desire, his commitment, I think has been top notch. And he scored some important goals as well. His goal against Chelsea, his goal against Crystal Palace. He scored some really, really important goals in some really, really important moments. And yeah, again, I think he's been brilliant. Whether or not he'll be an Everton player come the end of the season, we'll wait and see. But I think he's done well this season. He hasn't been unbelievable, but I think in comparison to the rest of the team, I think he's done well. Dominic Calvert-Lewin then. I'm going to give Dom a 3. And that's probably being a little bit too generous. But his overhead kick against Norwich actually is a shout. Richarlison's, I forgot about that because we lost that game. But it was a great goal. Dom. Listen, there's a lot of people who will sit here and rip Dominic Calvert-Lewin to bits. There's rumours going around at the moment that Frank Lampard wants to keep him at Everton and isn't interested in selling him. Now that might tell you something a bit different about Richarlison's situation. We don't know. But for me, with Dom, listen, he spent 9/10 of the season out injured. He started the season brilliantly, 3-3, and then we didn't see him effectively until the game against Crystal Palace. He played the odd game, but he wasn't really effective. He was working hard, he was winning balls in the air, but he wasn't scoring goals. I know he scored in that game against Brentford, but let's be honest, I think it grazed his t-shirt. It grazed his t-shirt. Remy says, I agree with everything you're saying, Cam, but the season rating must depend on the stats over the season. He hasn't got great stats, so 6, but credible for effort. And that's fair enough. I get where you're coming from. I just add a bit for the effort and stuff, but that's fair enough. Quality wise, he wouldn't be getting more than a 6, Gordon, because it's not warranted. But I get where you're coming from. Calvert-Lewin. Listen, ultimately, Dominic Calvert-Lewin gave us all a moment that we'll never forget. And I'm not saying that means he should deserve a ridiculously high rating for that. He gave us all a moment that we'll never forget in that winning against Crystal Palace. Has he had a great season? Absolutely not. And that's why he's getting a 3. 3 goals in 3. Has it been his fault? No, not really. He spent a lot of time out injured. I think he was rushed back the first time, which was a bad decision. And yeah, he's just had a really, really difficult season. He says that himself on his Instagram post. He's had a really tough season, as have Everton. But when we needed him most, when we needed him to come back, when we needed him to, again, make that impact, he did. Which I think deserves a lot of credit. But as a season as a whole, he's been largely out of it, hasn't he? So if you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. It only takes a second. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. That would mean a massive amount to me. Tamari Gray then. I'm going to give Tamari a... Again, I'm basing this off of expectation for Tamari Gray. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10, which is an average. Maybe a bit harsh, considering how... In fact, I give him a 6.5 out of 10. Started the season absolutely on fire. Absolutely on fire. It was excellent. Constantly scoring. His goals against Brighton, his goal against Burnley, his goal against Arsenal, which was in a different period. But he scored some good important goals this season, Tamari Gray, and he started the season like an absolute house on fire. He was excellent, and we were all sitting here having the same conversations. 1.5 million, what an absolute steal. I do think he tailed off, and I think he tailed off really, really quickly, to be honest with you. I think the last few months of the season for Tamari Gray have been woeful. I think he's been really, really poor. I think he's been largely ineffective. Now, listen, he ultimately put the cross in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal against Palace, and it was a fantastic, fantastic cross. It really, really was. Yeah, I just think he's tailed off massively. And he is our best player at set pieces, corners and stuff, but he's still not great at them. He's still not great. He still needs to improve. Tamari Gray's taken a lot of corners this season that have led me to just put my head in my hands and think, how the fuck can you, as a professional footballer, not take a corner? But he's the best at them. But that just says that just tells us what we need to know about the rest of the team. But yeah, he's tailed off. He's tailed off massively. He had a great start. And to be fair, for the 1 million we paid for him, I think it's still value for money. To be honest, I think it'd be a bit harsh to say otherwise, but he definitely tailed off towards the end of the season. And he didn't just tail off. He was really, really poor. It wasn't like he went from being great to just being good. He was really poor. There was a lot of games that he just wasn't involved in. He had an injury, of course, which is in there, which would have been at a suffering point as well. But yeah, he started well, tailed off, and then picked up in the last game, in the game we needed him to. I actually think he was good for the couple of games prior to that as well. But there was a big period where he was just completely ineffective, and that isn't good enough. Effectively, that isn't good enough. Who's next then? Who's next on my list? Anzos Townsend. I'm going to give Anzos again, from expectation, I'm going to give Anzos a 5. Come in very similar to Tamari Gray, had a great start. His goal against Burnley was unbelievable. Scored against Manchester United at Old Trafford. Scored in that game against Southampton, I think, as well. Oh no, he didn't. Sorry, he didn't. Yeah, again, he started the season really, really well. He almost, I think he exceeded his goal tally for the season prior within the opening 2 weeks. Works hard. I think he's a good professional to have around the team, around the squad. Brought in obviously by Rafa Benitez on a free. Again, on basing it off of what I expect, he's probably exceeded the expectation, but I still think he was below average this season. Again, he had a period where he was just woeful, where he was absolutely woeful. Arguably the worst player on the pitch on for a couple of weeks running. He picked up an injury, obviously, which kept him out for a long period of time towards the end of the season. I think he cares. I think he's always given everything. I think he's got that desire. I think he's got that commitment. I would like to have seen him and Dominic Calvert-Lewin playing the same team, because I think statistically was the best crosser of the ball in the Premier League the season prior, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin we know is a very effective header. But obviously Dom got injured, then Anzos got injured. But yeah, he had a decent season. From his standards, he'd probably say he's had a decent season. But when you look at the season Everton have had, we need more than Anzos Townsend. Effectively, we need more than Anzos Townsend. Is he good enough? I don't particularly think he is. But he was all right. I think from our standards, he was all right. Alex Iwobi then. This is going to be the most interesting one, because after this we go into Moise Keane territory and all of these different players that we won't spend too much time talking about. Alex Iwobi. I'm going to give Alex... This is difficult. I'm going to give him a 6. Some people will disagree with that, because some people will say it's too high. I'm sure Wayne will say it's too high. Some people will disagree with it because they'll say it's woefully low. Me reasoning being, has Alex Iwobi picked himself up massively since Frank Lampard come into the football club? Yes. Has Alex Iwobi been much better since Frank Lampard come into the football club? Yes. Has Alex Iwobi been brilliant over the last 4 or 5 weeks defensively, work rate, battle, desire, commitment? Yes. Has there been quality there? Yes. Was Alex Iwobi fucking awful for the 4 months that preceded Frank Lampard's reign as Everton manager? Yes. Has Alex Iwobi been fucking awful for the 3 years that he's been here prior to this point? Yes. Now, I am willing to give Alex the benefit of the doubt. As I said, that if we don't get a bid for him this summer and he stays at the football club, I'm willing to give him a benefit of the doubt at the start of next season that, okay, well, he improved drastically under Frank Lampard in the second half of last season, so let's see what he can do this season in a full season. But I'm still very much of the assumption and of the frame that if we were to get a decent bid for him, and by decent, I don't even mean what we paid for him, I'm probably thinking something upwards of 15 million, I'd sell him. Because I just can't in my heart think that, however many years of poor performances are all of a sudden forgiven because of a few good performances. Now, okay, those few good performances have come at the right time, and again, he's been the standout player in them performances. But as I said before, Frank Lampard, it wasn't a case of Alex is doing all right. Alex Iwobi's doing all right. He's not great, but he's all right. It was literally a case of people saying they never want him to play for Everton ever again. And yes, he's proven people wrong, and that's where you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. Sorry, yes, he's improved, and that's where you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's worked hard, and he's done that himself, and I think he put an Instagram post up basically saying he feels a lot happier now under Lampard and stuff. That's fine, that's all well and good. But for as much as we love Frank Lampard, and as much as I think he's the right man, as much as I want him to stay, I've got the hiccups. Frank Lampard mightn't be here in 12 months' time. That's just the way in which it works. That's the way football works. And is Alex Iwobi going to revert to the Alex Iwobi of prior if Frank Lampard does move on for whatever reason? Yeah, so there you go. I think he improved drastically, but his performances prior to Lampard were just shocking. And yeah, it shouldn't be forgiven because it's a seasonal player ratings. We go off the entire season, not just the last few months. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit that like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. That would be amazing. Moise Keane, he went out on loan, didn't he, in the summer? I think he played one pre-season game, maybe. Did he play in the Cup this season and get sent off? I think he played in the Cup this season and got sent off. He's getting a 1 because he's played most of his time at Juventus. And I think when he's played for Everton, he's looked either A, uninterested, or B, he's got sent off. Solomon Rondon is getting a 2. I think he's worked hard a couple of times. I think he's put himself about a couple of times. I think he's had one game where he's looked really, really good and he's looked a threat. But his sending off against Brentford was everything that you needed to know about Solomon Rondon. He's just a complete and utter waste of time. Brought in by Benitez. Nowhere near good enough to be a backup striker at this football club. Nowhere near good enough to be a top starting striker at this football club. Yeah, just not a very good footballer. Just not a very good footballer. And he hasn't had a very good season, has he? We can sit here all we like and say, oh, he puts himself about, or he works hard, this, that and the other. He's shite. He's absolutely shite. Delhi then. Obviously coming in January. I'm going to give Delhi a 2 as well. I'll give him a 3. I'll bump him up on that performance against Crystal Palace. Again, we haven't seen him an awful lot. We've seen him in spells before. Other than the Palace game, we saw him in spells. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes here. And in those spells, largely, he was ineffective. He wasn't very good. He's not very quick. He doesn't seem very... there doesn't seem to be very much momentum or very much intensity or... again, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you've got urgency. Doesn't seem to be much urgency with him. Listen, he come on and he changed the game against Crystal Palace when he needed to, and ultimately I think that is deserving of an extra mark bump up for that. But other than that, I've been really unimpressed with him. And if I'm being honest, I don't think he'll be an Everton player next season. But we'll wait and see. On that one. Ellis Sims, spent most of his season out on loan. Obviously played in that game against Chelsea, as did Lewis Dobbin. The pair of them can get Again, in what I expect from them, they would average, and that would mean they get a 6. But some people say, "Oh, that's too high." Fair, Ellis Sims and Lewis Dobbin can both get a. You can both get a 3. You know, when they've come on, I think they've impressed. Certainly Lewis Dobbin, but they just haven't played anywhere near enough. And obviously, they didn't get a sniff in under Frank Lampard. Ellis went out on loan, and Lewis Dobbin signed a new contract, and then went straight back to the under 23s. I think that was probably because Frank had said, "Listen, we're in a situation at the moment where we can't really afford to be, you know, throwing youngsters in there for the sake of it. We just need to get out of this situation, and then we'll see where we are in the summer." So I do actually think you'll see a lot more of Lewis Dobbin next season, and maybe even Ellis Sims, depends on what happens with him. But yeah, again, yeah. Who else have we got then? Donny Van Der Beek. He can get a 2. I think he come on in his debut and was fantastic, and then after that, didn't really do much. Obviously, he had some time out injured and had a new baby and whatever. Scored against Arsenal on the final day, but again, didn't really affect much in that game either. Disappointing loan spell, to be honest. Disappointing loan spell, but yeah, is what it is. Anwar El Ghazi's getting a 10. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable performance this season. Come on and done exactly what he needed to do when he needed to do it. Worked hard, battled, fought for the badge, fought for the shirt. Just an unbelievable footballer, isn't he, really? Just an unbelievable footballer. Who else is there? Cenk Tosun. Cenk Tosun's getting a 1 just for the fact that he sprays his hair on, to be honest with you. But other than that, yeah, ineffective. James hasn't played this season, so no point in rating him. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Obviously, we've had young Reece Welsh come on and a couple of other players, Isaac Price, come on and, you know, put themselves about and work hard and stuff. But I think it'd be unfair to City and give them a rating because they've played, 10, 15 minutes, the pair of them. And, you know, worked hard, ran round, done what they needed to do, but ultimately not really enough to get a rating, is it? So there you go. Listen, before we finish, let me know if I've missed anybody. Have I missed anybody that you want me to rate? Rafa Benitez is getting a none. Frank Lampard's getting a 6. I think he could have done better, but I think for what he had to work with and what he needed to do, he's ultimately succeeded. But I was hoping for a bit more. But, you know, again, it's difficult, and we'll wait and see where we are in the summer. Anybody else that I've missed out that you want me to rate? Ali came good the moment we needed him, said Stephen. He did. But again, is it enough? No, we half needed them before that, to be fair. But I get where you're coming from. Rondon 9 for Venezuela, says Wormy. Wormy says 5 games out of 38 plus cup games and whatnot. Yeah. Sam says everyone's off a like for our mad. Providing us with the heavy content, please then comment on and I'll give you the 5. I swear down, promise though. Nice one, my mate. Love you. CC says, I think that's fairly tailed off big time. He's the best at set pieces, corners in particular. Grey 4 says Wormy. Mombello says, you are too critical, mate. Richie deserves a lot of credit. Richie, I love him, but 5.5 disappointing season by his standards, says Wormy. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've missed anybody, have I? I don't think I've missed anybody out. I don't think there's anybody to really miss out. Yeah, listen, it's been a drastically disappointing season, of course. Although we had that unbelievable moment against Crystal Palace, it's been woeful. We will be doing a full season review, by the way, where we talk about, unfortunately, Rafa Benitez's time at the football club, and we go through, not game by game, but certainly period by period, and we talk about, you know, the positives and the negatives, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more negatives than positives, but that's going to come over the next few days or so. We are going to do another transfer news video as well. So look out for that one. We'll go through all of the latest transfer rumours. Sam's donated £2.49 to the stream. Thank you very much, Sam. Really appreciate that, my mate. Wonderlust says, that set of ratings makes sense. A bit harsh on DCL in my opinion, but I 100% understand why. That's just a disagreement, not a call-out. No, absolutely. Absolutely, and Sam says you know that. Anyway, look, we are going to finish it there then. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like. As I said, look out for the transfer video. That'll be up shortly, hopefully within the next 24 hours or so. And yeah, then we'll go on to the season review and we'll get this horrid season out of the way. But anyway, big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you soon on The Mighty Blues.